The Chicago Bulls front office, led by Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley, have received their fair share of criticism from Bulls fans over the last couple of seasons. Between the questionable moves/trades that were made just one season into their tenure and effectively ending the youth movement and accelerating this team's timeline to win now, to then the lack of moves and clinging to this concept of continuity to justify why they were keeping this current core intact despite their underperformance, giving Zach Lavine a max contract, extending Vucevic on a sizable 3-year deal at his age, no moves made at the deadline, and trying to sell this fan base on keeping this team competitive. And yet the team still remains below 500 and sitting 9th in the Eastern Conference. Like, we all have a reason to be critical of what this front office has done and how they've been approaching this roster both for now and for the future. At the same time though, and I know some people won't like this because it means coming to this front office's defense, but you have to give some credit where it's due, because as things currently are trending, they arguably had two of the best offseason signings, the best bargain deals of the offseason around the league, and that was when they re-signed two of their key young players, one of which we all thought likely wasn't going to be returning to the team, in Coby and Ayo Dosunmu. Two extremely team-friendly contracts for guys who now project to be the future backcourt of this team, guys who are both only 24 years of age and haven't even entered their prime yet. Just how good are these deals? Well, let's dive into it further. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Real quick, I got to give a shout out to the sponsor of the channel for the entire season, Underdog Fantasy. Pretty simple, guys. You sign up using the code Bulls Central. They're going to match your first deposit up to $100. Free money coming your way. For those that aren't familiar with Underdog, let me tell you about the app real quick. My personal favorite that I use on the app, NBA Pick'ems. With Pick'ems, you can pick higher or lower on most players' stats and win money based on the ones you get right. You pick higher or lower and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night if you do 5 Pick'ems and you get them all right. Again, use the promo code BullsCentral to get your first deposit doubled. Link to the site and the code is in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, when the Bulls were going into the offseason with Coby and Ayo set to become restricted free agents, it was believed by most that the Bulls would in fact re-sign Coby because he was coming off an improved season. Even though his overall numbers were down a bit, he had shown much more poise, better handles, improved passing, more efficient scoring, and the thought was the Bulls would get him on a cheaper deal because he really was a role player for them and coming off the bench. At the time, when a lot of Bulls fans and content creators were breaking down the Bulls cap figures, they had pegged Coby in for around $12 to $15 million annually. I personally thought Coby was going to be getting something in the range of 12 to 13 and thought that would be a fair price given his production, especially when you also consider that the full mid-level exception was just slightly above $12 million. So putting Coby a tad above the MLE sounded about right. And then to my surprise, the Bulls and Coby had agreed on a 3-year, $33 million extension, putting him at an average annual salary of $11 million. Now, there are some incentives to that deal to put him slightly above that, but Coby for this season is making $11.1 million, less than the mid-level exception. Ayo, on the other hand, it was unclear whether he would in fact be returning, especially after the Bulls signed Jevon Carter as one of their first signings after Coby White. When Jevon was signed, first of all, most people assumed that he was going to be the starting point guard that would replace Patrick Beverley because we all thought Coby was solid off the bench last season and would continue in that role. But regardless, by signing Jevon Carter, Bulls still had Caruso, Zach Lavine, and Coby. You thought, where does Ayo even fit at this point? A guy who struggled in his sophomore season and can't shoot the ball. And weeks passed since the opening of free agency on July 1st, and we didn't hear anything as far as a contract extension for Ayo. And seemingly, other teams weren't very interested in him as well. There was a world where you thought Ayo might have to play on the qualifying offer, and then you got the news that the Bulls agreed to terms with Ayo on a 3-year, $21 million extension. Now, I'll admit, I was skeptical on that signing. While I wasn't that concerned on the amount because they got him on a cheap annual deal, I was a little concerned with the length. And more so just like, why are they re-signing this guy to that figure when he's likely not even going to be cracking the rotation with how guard heavy the Bulls were? So yeah, it didn't make sense to me. But I thought, well, who knows? Maybe Ayo will bounce back from the previous season, and at a minimum, he can be close to what we saw in his rookie year at that production. And at that production, he'll be in line with making $6 million a year. But of course, to my surprise, and I'm sure really a surprise to all of us, Ayo has far exceeded any expectations we had of him, not only still being a high-level defender that we knew that he could be, but also elevating his game on offense, improving his shooting exponentially, going from shooting 31% from 3 last season on 2.4 attempts per game to now 39% on nearly 4 attempts per game. Playing with confidence, aggression, high IQ, much improved court vision, like you feel comfortable when the ball is in Ayo's hands now. I don't think that's something we could have said last year. And he's becoming enough of a scoring threat now that teams have to respect him on defense. He's a reliable player that the Bulls can count on a nightly basis. Since the All-Star break, Ayo has been averaging 16.2 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 6.2 assists, a drastic increase from not only what we saw earlier this season, but especially from last year. He's been able to impact winning, playing in the clutch for the Bulls, and the dude just looks like he belongs and does not shy away from the moment. Again, $6.2 million a year. Guys that are making around that amount are barely rotational players in the NBA, and Ayo, with all the injuries, has turned into a legitimate starter in this league. So consider this for a moment. Ayo and Coby combined for the next 3 seasons, well, I should say the next 2 seasons after this one because this season is almost over, they're going to be making a combined $17 to $20 million. The reason for the range is because each player's salary will be increasing slightly after each season. $17.5 million is what they're both making combined this season. For perspective, that's only $5 million more than the league's non-taxpayer mid-level exception, and will be close to the mid-level exception by the time their contract expire with the way the MLE has been rising through. That's less than Lonzo Ball's salary just for him as an individual, and more than half that of Zach LaVine's salary, who's making over $40 million a year. Here are some players making around $17.5 million this season: Norman Powell, Tim Hardaway Jr., Jonathan Isaac, Colin Sexton, D'Angelo Russell, Marcus Morris, Davis Bertans, Harrison Barnes, just to name a few. These are guys all making around that amount. Average to above average role players and Coby White and Ayo Dosunmu are making the same amount they are combined. Listen, the ownership really lucked out on this one, because we all know they don't pay the luxury tax. And it was getting to the point, hey, how are they going to pay all these guys, especially going into the future while remaining under the tax? This is how they're going to do it, by having their future backcourt making a combined salary less than $20 million. Players they can build with while still having the cap flexibility to round out the roster. Now, of course, they still have to get off Zach's contract. We'll see what the future is for Lavine and whether the Bulls will in fact be able to trade him in the offseason, especially coming off an injury. But they're able to get off Zach's deal. We'll see if Lonzo is able to come back, and if not, they free his salary off the books. We'll see if they're able to re-sign DeMar on a team-friendly deal, or they let him walk in free agency. But the point in all of this is, the Bulls, for the foreseeable future, have 2 very solid players on incredible bargain deals that I don't think a lot of us would have anticipated in outplaying those contracts. And while everyone likes to talk about how the Bulls have one of the bleakest futures in the NBA, and while some of that is a little true, one because of a general lack of direction, but what we can be excited for as Bulls fans is seeing these 2 young guys continuing to show growth and improvement, players' skills that complement each other nicely in the backcourt, and on bargain contracts that will position the Bulls to have flexibility on their payroll as the salary cap continues to rise. Like, there really is a world in which both Ayo and Coby, a year or 2 from now, are on the best contracts in the entire NBA relative to their overall production and the amount that they get paid. Now, while a lot of this credit goes to both Ayo and Coby for putting in the work and improving their game, I know Bulls fans hate to say it, but you got to give some credit also to this front office for signing those guys to these deals, not giving up on them, and believing in their abilities and what they can bring to this team's future. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Check out Underdog Fantasy if you're interested. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.